So, hey everyone, thank you for joining. And as always, I have a very special guest with me today, and that is Benny. So, I'm just going to let Benny introduce himself. But before that, I'll just mention that so many of us have things come up in our lives, like possibly a health scare, and that tends to be why we make changes in our life. Now, the purpose of these videos and the people that I'm getting to talk with me are to, I guess, help people notice things in their life and maybe change these things before something is going to come in, something may come into your life. So that is the purpose of these videos, and I'm really glad that you're here watching. So, hey Benny, thanks for coming, and please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Will do, with pleasure. Thanks for having me, Gabrielle, and what a noble thing to be doing for the world. And so a little bit about me. At the moment, people might know me as the movement monker. That's at least the current project that I'm communicating my teachings and my work out through the world. I've been doing lots of things over the years, but it really kind of all started, sadly, like you were mentioning when I had a really debilitating spinal injury. I was an athlete really kind of through young ages to my late teens, and was used to performing pretty well. There wasn't many things that I felt I couldn't do, but then I couldn't walk without pain for probably close to 2 years. And I needed to find a way to address it, to kind of not have that nagging away at me all the time. I figured there's more that I can be doing if I don't have to allocate so much energy to this pain that's going on. And so I learned a lot about my own pain. I learned a lot about pain in general. And I also learned that there was a lot of shortcomings in the health and wellness field where I needed support. And so I went to physios, osteos, chiropractors, even Reiki healers and all of that sort of thing. And not to say that any one of those modalities are not effective, but the number one challenge was I'd go see them, I'd get some relief, and then I'd go back into my everyday life, and then the issue would creep back. And over that happened. So I needed to learn a way how to access my own body's wisdom, I suppose. So in each unfolding moment, as it happened, I could then interpret the signals that were going on more accurately, and then I could respond in a way that was more supportive. And slowly but surely, through practice and time and observation, I learned a lot about my body, and now I pass that on and teach that to other people. And I help them get back in touch with their bodies and realize that their body is a part of who they are. It's fully interconnected to their mind. It's fully interconnected to their emotions. And it's not, taking care of your body is not just about working out. It's not just about going to the gym. It's not just about exercise. It's an integrative part of everything that we do, of every moment. Even as we're having this conversation, our bodies are involved.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of, I suppose, in a nutshell, a little bit about how I came to be where I am today. And hopefully my experiences can support those watching today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so many of us actually live in pain. Like we have a pain in our shoulder or leg, and we just either ignore it, or we go to the doctor, maybe get some medication, and it's just kind of masking that. And I think it's like part of our busy lives. We just want a quick fix, and we need something that's going to help us in day to day. But I think with your experience, you can share with actually movements that we do and practices that we can do daily. They're actually going to help us relieve those things long term, and actually work on where that's come from, why it's there, and what we can do to change it. You mentioned actually, which is really, we all breathe. What you see on your website is like there's like breathing techniques and ways that we should be breathing. Maybe many of us are not breathing correctly. That can be causing imbalances in our lives. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, breathing is a topic that I'm fairly passionate about because it's pretty important to live. We can go without food and water for, some time, but you can't go without air for that long.
Yeah.
Even if you're like a high level free diver, I think they're holding their breath for maybe 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So if we can improve that one thing that we do all the time, then that's a really wonderful place to start in improving the health of our whole physiology. And one thing, I really am inspired by ancient yogic practices and ancient martial art practices and Taoist practices. And a common theme with all of those things we're linking the mind, the body, and the breath together. And so one thing first, when starting with the breathing, before any techniques, is to learn to observe the breathing, to become aware of how we're breathing and to start to notice. And when people start to do that in the beginning, they sometimes go, oh my God, I realized I'm holding my breath during this time, or maybe I'm not even fully breathing into my lungs. Maybe breath's only getting up to here. So starting to link in how their breathing is being performed throughout the course of a day and what things are affecting that. And one of the intents first is just to get the breath so it fully fills the lungs from bottom to top. And not just in a two-dimensional perspective, but in a three-dimensional perspective. So kind of imagining that a sphere is filling and emptying inside of us all the time. So that can be a really good place to start to first observe, is that happening in my body right now? and then can I observe also things that might be contributing to the obstruction of that? So maybe, I'm focusing on all the to-dos that I have during the day. And, we were talking briefly before we start, and I feel a little self-indulgent because today there's no one else in the house. I didn't have to worry about anyone other than myself. But sometimes, when you're a mum and all of that sort of thing, like you, there's more than just you.
Yeah.
So sometimes we can go, oh God, I just don't have time. However, we don't need to necessarily take any extra time to do this. This can just be, we reserve a little space for us amidst all of the other things that are happening in daily life. So, you're taking the kids to school. While you're driving the car, just observing your breathing. Maybe you're taking a break and having a cup of tea. Observe your breathing.
Break? What's that?
Yeah. So, when the moral, I suppose, is that if you can just reserve a little part for yourself for observation inside your body, then that's a really wonderful place to start. Of course, the more time you can spend just by yourself, of course, you can observe a little more deeply. However, but just a really wonderful place to start, to at least start to go, hey, I now start to feel the benefits of this. And then maybe priorities might shift just a little bit. Yeah, that can be a really good place to start. So if we can observe the breath, observe the way that air is going in and out of the body and how it's filling the torso or the lungs in particular, and how that affects our whole physical structure. That's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Just one little thing at a time. You might just start with the quality of air going in and out, how that links with our thoughts, how that links with our emotions. And then go from there. Just keep one eye on that as much as you can as you go out through your daily life.
Yeah.
So that could be a good place to start.
Yeah, for sure. And I, as myself a mum, and most people watching, being a mum, it gets busy. And I, thinking about what you're saying, I feel like my breath is very shallow. Like I'm kind of anxious. I'm like, oh, I've got to do all this stuff. So it's just that first noticing, like you're saying, just that first step is just noticing how you're doing it. And just, when you do have that moment when, you've got everyone in the car finally and you're sat there and you're off you go, and you can just, okay, even just one deep breath maybe would be better than doing, just carrying on with keeping in that shallowness.
Exactly. It's kind of, and I relate a lot of this stuff to, some of my teachings and background is in martial arts. And in martial arts, you learn, one of the things I like about it, I'm not particularly interested in fighting or anything like that, but when you work with an opponent, because I suppose that's what's going on in life, not to put that framing that life's against you, but there's always external forces that are placing influence and pressure upon us. And they can really help us grow if we look at it in a certain way. So for instance, let's say an opponent is coming at you, all of these external forces. And in the beginning, you might go, oh God, it's a lot to take in. And the way our breathing kind of reacts to that, maybe there's an emotional response of fear or anything like that. And then our heart rate elevates and our breath shortens and we go into fight or flight, all of that sort of thing. That's not really going to help us in the martial arts situation. And not to say that, the mums listening and those other listening, that we go and punch out people or throw people or anything like that, but it's an energy coming towards us. And we can choose to kind of, take on that energy. But often in good martial arts practice, it's to redirect and divert that energy, to not let it affect us, for us to stay in our center and be aware of that which is happening around us. And breathing is a wonderful place to start to become aware of how those things affect us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think as some of us get more, we can notice other people and we notice their energies. I feel like I do see people around, I'm like, they just seem really grounded and present and just still, and they've kind of got it together. And I feel like, possibly the breath has got something to do with that as well.
Yeah. And also there's one little thing that I perceive to touch on as well. Amidst the things that we notice in our body, we're talking about the breath at the moment, it's really important that as we notice them, that we do our best to not label them as good, bad, or anything like that, because the body's always changing. It's, they say on average, I think the cellular turnover is about 7 years, I think, on the human body. So every 7 years, there's no cellular information that was the same as 7 years ago, so to speak. And I don't like to put an arbitrary number, but let's just say, things are always changing and turning over. But so if we place our judgments on, oh my God, I'm breathing shallow, I'm not as still or present as that person, then we can continue to habituate and perpetuate that state. When really what this is about is just coming to a place of, I suppose, love and compassion and acceptance of yourself. And from that space, that can then, it's sort of like a little seed that you plant inside you. You go, hey, I accept myself in all of the things that I am. And from that space, then the good stuff can start. And that takes practice.
I'm thinking if you did say, oh yeah, I'm breathing shallow and that's not good, that can start a belief into you, right? And then that carries on, and then you don't realize, but your underlying belief about your breath is that it's shallow and that's great and that's not good. So thank you for saying that. That's really important.
And you see what that can do to the mind, and then that then reciprocates and creates tension in the body.
Totally.
So we need to step out of that cycle into a place of acceptance, into a place of just observation, like children have. They're beautiful, they're curious,
So curious. It's beautiful to watch, actually. Do you work much with children? I'm just curious, actually about their breath, and is there something that we can help our kids to learn about breathing?
It's very interesting that you asked that. I don't directly work with children, but I have a lot of friends and family with children. And I don't know what it is about me, but I seem to kind of be friends with kids quite easily. I love kind of getting down and playing with them. And that's kind of part of my inspiration for, moving freely, is so I can kind of get down to their world and just understand and learn, because there's such wonderful teachers.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but I observed a couple of things. First and foremost, I learned a lot of my practices from breathing, from watching babies for a long time, of just watching as that human comes out unimpeded, without kind of conditioned belief systems and all of that. So that they're just doing what's instinctive and natural. There's no thoughts associated. It just is kind of what it is like. And, you know, the state of an animal. They don't think about their breathing. They just breathe.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge to say that to people, you know, to adults who have maybe got some debris over the top. So we may need to clear that over time.
Yeah.
But so with children, I noticed just like one thing. I was having a walk with this young boy the other day, and we were walking his dog. He's got quite a big dog, and the family can't walk it too easily. So I took him for a walk, and we were walking together, and there was this one moment where there was just a pause, a silence in the conversation. And he sort of like scrambling to get something to say. And I said, silence is a really wonderful way to get to know each other, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, this isn't directly related, but there's a point to what I'm saying. And in that moment, I noticed he just went, like he let go of, and I think he's about 7. So imprints and all that. So he's starting to kind of, you know, discover the world and all that sort of thing. And there's this real moment where his breathing just completely changed. And that was, I just, did you notice that? It's like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, you just breathe differently. I'm like, how do you feel now? And he's like, oh, I just feel much more relaxed. Yeah. And yeah, so it was really a really wonderful moment. I would say, kind of to put a moral with all of that is, you know, I suppose doing our best to support kids in continuing to express themselves. You know, beyond going, this is how you need to breathe, little Jimmy, or whatever, and all of that sort of thing. A lot of the breathing is kind of affected, I noticed, through kind of 2 things: expression and repression. And I can relate, as a kid, I would repress a lot of things. Yeah. And that was a lot of the source that constricted my breathing. Ultimately, if I keep whittling away down at the source of, like, I had a thought, a feeling, emotion, I was afraid to express it. And then it built up in my body. And then on and on and on. And, you know, there was lots of emotions that were built up. And so one thing I believe, you know, when I kind of I hang out with kids, is just really just allowing them to be themselves, allowing them to express all of that sort of thing. And I notice when that happens, certain ways of breathing that are free and available tend to be associated. So, you know, being kids a wonderful opportunity if we can start to do that at a young age, and we don't have to undo it later on. Yeah. So I know it's a bit of a detour to the side of the question, but hopefully it has relevance as well.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think, like, I know my daughter, like, if she's upset, obviously she's like breathing really fast, and yeah, I didn't realize, but I'm like, just breathe, take a deep breath. And yeah, so you know, we obviously do things that we don't realize until we think about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I have noticed her breath, and when she's doing that, and to help her calm down or help her do something else.
Yeah. And it's, you know, like, even before the emotion, the patterns of breathing will change 9 times out of 10. And so the more we, you know, particularly, you know, as a lot of mums will be watching this, one of the best things that I feel that we can do, not to put the best on it, but is to really kind of be an example. The more we start to notice our own breathing, the more we can then be in touch with our children's breathing, the more we can become aware of those subtle things before it becomes a big thing that's maybe hard to manage. We can start to then be attentive and respond even before the event may climax and all of that sort of thing. Yeah.
And I know with myself, and for a lot of mums, well, most mums, we want to really help our kids to have the best life that they can have. And yeah, so if we're noticing this stuff now, hoping really that we're going to prevent things happening in the future for them. which is huge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's one other thing that I feel needs to be said as well.
Mm-hmm.
And children, they pick up on so much in their environment that, like, they just reflect it. It's uncanny. From my observations, of course, maybe there's some children that don't as well. But one thing that I notice in mums is, because these days in the West, it's like I have to tip my cap if I was wearing one to all the mums out there, because it's not easy, particularly with all the pressures on being a good mum.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And like, considering that, like, I've got a few friends who are of Indian descent, and I love the culture that they have around bringing up children, of the grandparents and the uncles and aunties. Like, the parenting role is shared, but in Australia, it's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Of, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, got to do that. And I don't think there is any such thing as being a perfect mum. And if mums know that, and maybe I'm saying this to my mum as well, that, as kids, we know that you love us and all of that sort of thing. And as mums, if we can kind of take the pressure off a little bit, I really believe that can then allow an exchange of, I suppose, ease in the dynamic with our children as well. Yeah. So, of course, I'm not a mum, believe it or not. But maybe something that could be worth considering, of just accepting that you're a wonderful mum. You gave birth to a child. A human being came out of you. Like, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we're very hard on ourselves, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a big job. I think it's scary, we're looking after these little beings, and there's a lot we have to think about, and just take that pressure off ourselves, and just we're doing the best we can. And that's, it is nice. I love that there are different cultures that do have their family around, because I feel that bringing up a child is to be part of, easier with the community around you. Like, we've come over from England, so we have no family here, and we've actually moved quite a lot, so we haven't got those really deep connections. And sometimes, I'm like, that's one of the things that I worry about, and think, I need more people around for them. But again, we're doing the best we can, and I'm reaching out to people like you, and with these interviews that I'm doing, I'm learning so much, and I'm really glad that I can share that too. So thank you again.
It's a pleasure.
So with the breathing, that brings me on a little bit to, like, tension. You speak about holding all these different these tensions in our body, these pains, and how we can relieve those.
Yes.
What would you how could you explain that for us?
Yes. Well, not a lot of people kind of I suppose understand the nature of tension. We only often understand that which we've directly experienced. And so often a lot of the things, like we were saying before, that I say don't always make sense to people straight away. Even the concept of tension. And the way I look to explain it to start is that, really, when I say tension, it's about a habitual pattern that is causing tension in the body. So that might be a habitual pattern of rigidity. So that might cause contraction in the body. That may be a rigid thought process or a rigid emotional, construct. Something that, like, it's like ice in nature. There's not a lot of movement going on. And also habitual patterns of flaccidity. So where things are just a bit kind of loose and like they're collapsing. It's also possible to relax too much, We relax all our bodies too much, then we become a pile of bones on the floor. So releasing tension is about really finding the middle space between those habituated states. So then we can start to go, maybe I am rigid in this belief. Maybe I am rigid in the way that I'm moving and exercising, when I'm walking, when I'm running, when I'm, taking the kids to X, Y, Z place. maybe I am rigid in my belief on, what it is to be a good mum.
Yeah, definitely. I was
So,
thinking like rigidity. I was thinking being rigid in my body and my movements, and I wasn't thinking until you said about in your thought patterns and your belief. That's
yes.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because all of these things, the body is a physical manifestation of our thoughts and vice versa. Yeah. So there's
Yeah.
always an interchange going on. And every cell has the capacity for memory. Science has shown that. So it informs our thought processes and all of that sort of thing. So, I often notice that rigidity, seen here or here or here, often correlates with certain thought processes.
That's so interesting. I've been talking or thinking a lot about the program that we have, um, the program we grew up with, and just that's around in society, and that will come with a lot of these rigid like belief systems and the ways that we should do things. Oh, that's
Yes.
so interesting.
Yeah. So first and foremost, to release tension, it's really important to practice, and it doesn't just happen overnight. It's like if you join a gym and you're looking to get stronger, let's say you choose the path of lifting weights, you don't just go lift the end weight at the stack straight away. All of this is the same of to release these kind of habitual patterns. First, we need to practice being at peace with ourselves. And, for me, I noticed when I started to get into, I suppose, more relaxing practices, nourishing physical practices, that was the furthest from what I was experiencing at the time. When I started, probably a more well-known practice of Qigong, which is really all about observing and working with the energy inside of the body, and can get talked about in some really esoteric ways, but it's a really physical response of maybe let's just transpose the word energy with circulation of fluids and all of that sort of thing. But as I was doing that, I got really angry through the process because I was like, why am I doing this? God, I've got to do 10 other bloody things.
Yeah.
But what I noticed was that it was a lot of this stuff that was within me that couldn't be still, that I always had to do things. And that triggered me all the time. Whenever I had a moment to stop and relax, this program would come up and no, you're not doing enough. So then I was always kind of, you can see I was creating a reaction, and then here's an opportunity to relax, boom, no, can't do it. So then that state built up in my body over the years. So I needed to first come to peace with being still. So that I could start to move. Yeah, it's kind of like yin and yang. There's no, with the first rendition of the symbol, there's a black side with a little white dot and a white side with a little black dot. There's no ability to separate them. There's always a little bit in each. But first we might like to start to notice, are we averse to one side or the other? And then start to practice being in that state. And also be okay that things might come up that are not pleasant to us in the beginning.
I guess it's like, how do you start that? How do you start that stillness? I know for myself, I have a meditation practice, and then when I first started, like I could only sit there a few minutes, and I'd be like, got to do this, got to do that. What was your steps to get yourself started?
Yeah, I learned lots of different schools. The first I started was just a very old school kind of methodology of just putting a dot on the wall and just looking at it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so that was helpful. What it ultimately taught me as I kind of went through lots of different traditions and modalities is it's about kind of being in a centered state. So a meditative state is accessible in every moment. Right now I could be talking and meditating, kind of like what we were talking about before, of keeping that centeredness within yourself. So there's 3 areas that are really useful to start to induce that state that I find. So first is focusing on, and when I say focus, I mean a gentle focus, probably more in Eastern culture. In the West, focus is often like that.
Yeah, like a rigid focus, right?
Yeah, so we need to loosen up focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it is that way, maybe we're a bit like that, and maybe we do need a little bit of that. So so a lot of this practice is first getting to know yourself and being okay with that. But if we can focus on the breath first, like we've spoken about, so just become aware of it to start, and then maybe set an intention of how you like it to be. Yeah, if it's like short and shallow and erratic, maybe just set a bit of an intention to slow the breath down. I'm slowing my breath down. My breath is full and relaxed. Whatever, there's no rules. Yeah. So that can be a really wonderful place to start. Then focusing the thoughts. So as thoughts arise, just bringing it back to a central place. It can be like that dot that I said before.
Yeah.
It could be on a mantra, whatever it is, like I am calm and in this present moment. Something like that.
Yeah.
There's no rules once again. And then focusing the structure. So focusing the centeredness of the structure. So meaning our skeletal structure. So whether we're standing, whether we're walking or seated on a meditation cushion, it doesn't matter. Just becoming aware. Maybe we didn't know that we were like slouching to this side or like sort of in these habitual postures of just starting to then come back to a place of where at least we get some reference point that the body can let go a little bit. Because all this is just about finding the next millimeter. If you can find a little bit of new that you hadn't realized it was there, 1 millimeter at a time, if let's say you find a millimeter a day as an example, that's 365 millimeters a year. It's a lot. Yeah. So that can be a really useful place to start because it works on many levels. It works on what's going on in the thoughts of the mind. It works on feeling the body, and it works on connecting all of that and coming back to the one physiological function that governs all physiological functions of the breathing. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yeah, for sure. It's making me think like I do like lean to a certain side or like, and I'm like, why, what, well, now I'm questioning, I'm like, why do I do that? I feel like now maybe I'm compensating for something. I know I have a pain on my left side. So maybe that's why I generally lean on this side. So it's making me think definitely about things that I do. So that's really awesome. Hopefully that's other people are finding that as well. So
yeah. So there's lots of stages. That's a really wonderful stage to get to. And then coming back to that observational stage of maybe I don't even need to know why.
Yes, absolutely.
We always want answers. And sometimes, like I said before, sometimes I can say things because I'm always doing my best to communicate from what I've personally experienced in my body and also observed and talked about people experiencing. So a lot of the time I may have experienced lots of different layers that people don't even realize is part of the human experience. And, in the beginning, all I knew was like my muscles contracting, and I didn't really know much about relaxation when I was an athlete. And then when I was experiencing pain, all I knew was the signal of pain. If anyone had have said like, what does your heartbeat feel like? I mean, like, I don't know. but now I do my best to, if I get too excited, if I get too focused on what's going on outside of me, to come back to these functions, to start to feel my heartbeat. And the senses shouldn't stop at the skin. We have nerves that permeate throughout the whole physical structure, and they can be sensitized so that we can feel what's going on from outside to inside all the time. And I really believe strongly that that's such an important skill to attain to take care of our health. Yeah, because we can feel the way directly. And I believe that even like people know that this is true, they feel it. Like, when you have a thought, it might affect like straight away, like you want to eat or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Or, like you get heart palpitations and all that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, like, you start sweating or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We can feel these things. And I suppose what I'm talking about is the more attuned we get, then the less it becomes like a peak experience that we then kind of fall out of control with. And I say control very gently as well. But so just some things to consider.
Mm. I've heard the word like flow state. Is that kind of to do with that? Like I don't really understand it. I kind of guess around it as just kind of being in flow with your life and with your daily practice. But yeah, like explain to me what people are talking about when they say like being in the flow state. Or
Yeah, well, I can probably explain maybe what I experience of it.
Yeah.
And but in general consensus, more and more people are talking about being in flow and all of that sort of thing, and being in touch with just the rhythm of life and all of that sort of thing. And that can sometimes be really stressful, because then we go, well, how do I be in flow? I'm not in flow. Oh my God. What is this concept? Yeah. And for me, it's often about not being a victim to what I would refer to as the reasoning mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasoning mind is just as simple as it sounds. It's the thing where reasons are associated.
Yeah. So
I need to do this because of XYZ reason.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now we only know that reason based on past experience.
Yes.
So one concept of flow is if our thoughts are always, if our actions are based on past thoughts, then we're trying to move this way. You can see how that's very obstructing to the natural flow of what we'd like to do in a given day.
Yeah.
So we need to learn to quiet these, and I would say even further, discipline, and kind of go, okay, cool thoughts. You're really there. You're really useful for me to recall things like how to drive a car, how to hit a nail, in with a hammer, how to, like, just simple things. Yeah.
I do that stuff that we do without thinking, like, making coffee.
All of those things, like really important things that we need to recall that skill. When I touch a stove, it's hot, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but we don't need it to make our decisions, to run our lives. That actually pulls us back into the past, and that's kind of a tangible way that I perceive that takes us out of flow.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So if we can ask, maybe in the moment, is this, like, what do I truly need right now? Like, really do a bit of a gut check. And then maybe something will come up that you're like, oh, and your reasoning mind will come in and go, oh, no, you can't do this because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But that might be the very thing that you truly need to take the step to be in this state of flow. Might be have that conversation. It might be take a walk. It might be have a cup of tea. It might be that it's often not comfortable. But once you move through that little kind of buffer of discomfort, you might find that there's this new expansive space that you haven't experienced before. And that, to me, is a useful way to practically go into a state of flow without it being a concept that you try and create that's based on things that people have said. And like, flow as a concept is wonderful, but the way you tap into it is unique to you.
Like
some people
present
ultimately, and like things like that are wonderful. It can be sometimes difficult for people to grasp. It's sort of like, I don't teach yoga, but I teach a lot of yoga practitioners and people who I support their yoga improving. And where my kind of expertise have come in, it's sometimes I laugh at myself and go, oh, this is silly. This shouldn't be a job. Because like yoga itself is a beautiful practice that was created back when, by and large, humans were in a more natural state. Their bodies weren't being pulled out by so many different stresses.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd do yoga and you'd apply balance, and then you'd just continue to amplify that because you're already in a place of union, yeah? And then you just expanded that. Whereas a lot of the time these days, it's difficult to come to that space because people are so out of balance. So when we say things like, just be present, just breathe, we actually don't know how to. And it's not about necessarily learning how to, like first you do this, first you do that, but it ultimately comes back to the mind once again that I've noticed is we need to start to quieten down that reasoning mind.
Yeah.
So then we can start to perceive what's actually happening in the moment. So one useful thing to be present is what we focus on grows. That's the saying that a lot of people seem to be familiar with. If the mind is going crazy, maybe sometimes we don't give it so much focus. We don't feed that wolf, so to speak. Maybe we come back to our senses. Maybe we come back to what we see. Maybe we come back to what we hear, what we taste, what we smell. And that can all of a sudden pull us into, it's very difficult to not be present when you're smelling a beautiful flower.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I've taken up recently the practice of wood turning, and it's really difficult to not be present when I'm doing that, when I'm working with the wood. At the end, it's such a beautiful experience of when it's turning and you sand the wood at the end, and it just it's like silk just kind of gliding over your hand as you do it. It's so difficult for me to think about the XYZ to-dos when I'm doing that. So you don't have to take up wood turning. Maybe when you're driving the car, feel the texture of the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Really hear, maybe the quality of the person singing over the radio.
Mm.
So they can be some practical ways to slowly start to cultivate a state of presence that's not based upon a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more based on an experience.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm just thinking if you're needing to make a decision, don't make that on your past experiences. Sit with how you are now, how you're feeling, what's going on with you now, and what do you want right now. Not, oh, I'm not going to do this because last time I did it, this happened. I'm going to decide whether to do this because of how I'm feeling now and what's going on now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And for me, my training ground is in my physical practice. Mm-hmm. That's how I cultivate that space. And I notice that the more I've cultivated it in my physical time slot, then, and with that intent, it can flow over into the way I make decisions in my business, in my relationships, in the time that I take for myself in silence, all sorts of different things. So that's why I really feel, even if it's only a minute a day, that we all have a practice where we can just learn to pay attention to our body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Everyone's got a minute. Yeah.
I know we think we don't, but yeah, it's just,
yeah.
I used to get up early and have this beautiful daily practice. I loved it. I'm not sure how I got out of that, but I don't do that at the moment. Other things, you start focusing on different things. But for mums, how do we get that movement back into our lives? We're busy, getting the kids up, doing all this stuff. How do we get that movement? So we can't go off to an exercise class because we've got our kids. That's different as well. That's still removing yourself, going to a class, coming back. Instead of doing that, how do we get movement back into our lives so we feel better in our bodies, we've got more energy, we're feeling good and energized for our kids to look after them?
Yes. Well, first of all, simplify. So when something's not working, it's often because things are too complicated in our minds. So simplify and keep simplifying until you can be consistent with it. So that may be something like, all right, kids, depending on the age of the kids and all that sort of thing. We're going to do a little thing where mummy needs to take care of her body, so let's go for a walk every day. Or like come down to their world and just start to like crawl around with them, play with them on the ground, that sort of thing. But just at the level that you're okay with. You don't need to, because a lot of kids will outplay adults any day of the week. And so we go, oh, no. It's very funny. Like being a grown man and playing on the play equipment with like other people's children, there's a lot of stigmas attached with that. Like I get a lot of weird looks, and I can understand why, you know, like with all of, So, however, like I see a lot of parents just standing back. I'm watching, and you also get the other parents that are really like, oh, little Billy, don't do this, don't do that, you know, all that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm not one to judge of that, but if we can just participate, that can be, because your kids are always going to play, like,
and they always want you to play with them as well. Like
exactly.
I admit I do often just watch them. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and you know, so to instill that, and if you just start to do that and observe your body while you're doing it, then you're moving in lots of wonderful ways, probably more than you would at a spin class or on a treadmill or anything like that. You're playing with your kids, and you might even start to then rebalance injuries and all that sort of thing if you notice enough.
Yeah.
So that can be a really wonderful way to start. If you have no time, if this is the person that's like, I have no extra time, well, integrate it with things that are already happening.
Yeah.
You know, it may even be something as simple as I was playing with my partner's niece. She's 6 now, and I'd never heard of this before. She has this set. It's sort of like Meccano and Lego got married, and the love child of that is this this set of, it's called Mobilo, and I don't know whether you've heard of it.
I haven't heard of that. No,
it's really wonderful. But it was her birthday, and she got it as a gift for her birthday, and I started sort of just sitting down, and I was building some things with her. I think she was building all these wonderful different like cars and things and stuff, and I was building something, and then all of a sudden her mum and dad, and then we're all down on the floor playing Mobilo. And you know, like if you want to start to open up your hips, just sit on the floor more often, you know, because you're crawling around, you're doing all sorts of different things. And so that can be a really wonderful way to start. There's, of course, other ways to build a practice that takes some time, depending on, you know, the time that you have and your intent. But that can be a really wonderful thing of just spend some time playing with your kids with the awareness of your own body.
Yeah, just being aware of doing it.
Yeah.
Because I know like a lot of mums, they want to lose their baby weight, or you know, they want to lose weight. I actually found it quite easy. Like breastfeeding is amazing, so it just really helped with that. But and I remember going to a naturopath, and she was like, so what exercise do you do? And I was like, I've got 2 kids, I don't really sit around, like I don't sit down, like I'm constantly on the move, like I haven't had that problem. But what did come up was just my muscle tone, and my strength isn't good. Like I'm not very strong. But so like what would I need to do, like to build that strength and that, I guess, the more flexibility and that movement a bit more?
Yes. Well, first, strength's a very loaded word.
Okay.
And so first of all, when I work with people, I always suggest that we get really clear on what that means to you.
Yeah, okay.
Because for some people, strength is, you know, lifting, you know, X amount of weight above your head and, you know, like being super strong. For weightlifting, some people it's, you know, like just being able to do the gardening.
Yeah, so, I think I'm thinking toning.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So which is another
bit different,
interesting term. Yeah. So what we're kind of I suppose talking about is what's happening on the outside, like how we appear, all of that sort of thing. And I don't say any of this to kind of deviate from your questions, by the way, just to invoke and invite maybe a different perspective.
Yes.
Of first, we still need to cultivate that tone, that beauty inside of ourselves.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Like, maybe I'll share a little bit of my experiences for myself, and it's not going to be exactly the same, but the principles will be very helpful. So in the beginning, I was a really skinny guy as a kid, and I was kind of the runt of the litter, which seems funny today. But so from a young age, I took to a lot of really intense, like, weightlifting activities and intense exercise type activities to build myself up. There was a time where, I was, I'd sometimes eat like a 12 egg omelette for breakfast, just to be built up, right? I kept building. Eventually that rigid mindset built up in my body, which led to an injury. So I needed to come back and really look at, like, what is like a beautiful body to me? What is strength from, like, a character perspective as well? And as I started to do that, I do a lot of very soft practices with like salt and pepper shakes of hard. Yeah. So I kind of say, like, yang practices and all that sort of thing that excite the sympathetic nervous system. So excite that fight or flight response. It's a bit like salt and pepper. It really can take your dinner to another level, but you don't eat it for dinner.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that one.
Okay. So when it comes to toned muscles and carrying a lower percentage of body fat, so those muscles that you do have can be seen, you need to be in a state where the metabolism can more readily just burn. Yeah. So if you're really stressed about the way you look all the time, and this perfect image of the body, then that's going to create a certain amount of stress. Some people have different types of metabolism where that stress actually burns through tissue. Other people, it does the opposite. Yeah. So at the very least, if we can come to a state where we're relaxed and then we apply that to our exercise habits, then the body fat will start to balance out to wherever it's natural for you at the moment. Yeah. Because the human body is a seasonal part of nature as well. Sometimes we're not meant to be, carrying six packs and all of that sort of thing.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So that's just maybe a little bit of the inner game. And then applying that to things that, challenge your muscles in a gradual manner. Like, it may be like if you're playing on the monkey bars with your kids, maybe you're not strong enough to fully hold your body weight yet, but you might, like, most monkey bars are, much shorter than an adult is tall.
Yeah.
So you might just have your feet on the ground and just swing around and just feel that, there's going to be a lot of strengthening happening throughout this whole chain in your body.
Yeah.
And go from there. And consistently applying that can go a long way. Crawling on the ground, there's a lot of strength to be built there. You look at a child as they grow, when they're kind of maybe like into their sort of 10 to 12, like, a lot of them have, like, beautiful muscular development. I don't say that to be weird. It's, like, they're not like, they're just playing.
Yeah, just playing. Yeah, that's true.
Maybe they do a bit of dance, maybe they do some martial arts or some gymnastics or whatever. But, like, just a little bit goes a long way. Yeah. And if we're always stressed and always in that sympathetic state of our nervous system, so the hormones like cortisol and the adrenal glands firing, all that sort of thing, it's very difficult to burn fat in that state. So it might seem counterintuitive because sometimes it's like, I need to do more, like, I've got to get this baby weight off, all of that sort of thing. Yeah. But how many mums that have struggled with baby weight get rid of it with that belief?
Yeah, it's kind of like that should, like, I should, it's, and into those.
Yeah. So a lot of these things will require a high degree of trusting in yourself, because it's not going to feel like you're getting those endorphins all the time necessarily, because a lot of the time we can become addicted to endorphins, addicted to feelings, but that may not be actually what our body needs, what is good for our body at the time. And so my focus is to take care of the needs of the body, so then the beauty inside that we cultivate can then be seen on the outside. So these days, like, I'm very happy with my body.
Yeah.
I might not be as big as I was once before, but I was helping a friend move house the other day, and I have a lot of confidence in what I can do now because I practice it.
Yeah.
And there was this kind of moment where my friend was like, "Oh, don't lift that," or whatever. And I was like, "Oh, it doesn't seem like it'll be that heavy." And it was very light for me to pick up, but he just couldn't believe, how strong I was. Whereas strength in this case was just being better with leverage. Yeah. Getting my bones in a place where they could just align better. So I didn't have to lift with my back, that sort of thing. Yeah. So some of these, I believe, are important considerations, because sometimes we can really go and chase that goal. I'm going to, get fit. I'm going to get tone. I'm going to get lean, all of that sort of thing. And we create a lot of stress in the process, and we burn ourselves out. And, for mums, like, I'm not a mum, so it's easier for me to dedicate the time to take care of my body.
Yeah.
So, like, make the most of the time that you have. And if you get a gap, don't burn yourself out in those times.
Yeah, that's
just going to then affect all the other areas of your life.
Yeah.
You've got enough on your plate.
I know. I think, like, we just sometimes just need to let go, like, rather than getting more stressed about something. Oh, I've got to lose this weight, I've got to do this. We just need to be mums right now and look after our kids. And once you're kind of happy in that place, it just, your body will relax, like you said, and it will do what it needs to do. Like, it's interesting. Like, you put kind of words to how I generally am. Like, the times when I'm not feeling so good about my body is because I'm stressed or something's going on, but the times when I'm just in flow and I'm just being a mum, I'm just doing what I need to do, and I'm just happy in myself, then I don't need to go and, like, worry about my body. Like, the thoughts aren't there anymore, because I'm focusing on what's more important at that time. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
well, it's kind of tapping into, like, what you really need. And not being like, society can be judgmental. And there's a lot of pressure on women in particular these days with media and all of that sort of thing, to be a certain way, to look a certain way. Even men, it's growing, and I just say, like, ignore all that. Like, no one will ever know you like you know you. So, see the beauty inside of you. Give yourself some time and space. And, I just see it happen all the time with my students. And I've been working with one of my students who's just actually given birth to a child. And so we're working a lot through the pregnancy. And she's in the health and fitness world. So there was a lot of, in the build-up, a lot of pressure of, like, I need to do this. And there was people around her, and, also past experiences of, but eventually we got to a stage where she was like, my body's changing all the time. And I'm learning to work with it. So our intent was to just keep her body just as balanced as we could as she went through the process. And, to go through a childbirth without having lower back pain, etch away at you all the time, was a really wonderful intent at the time. And, now after she's given birth, we're starting to have conversations around, like, getting her back to the things that she loves doing. And first, the intent was kind of get her back to balance. So, all of that relaxin that was secreted through the body and all of that sort of stuff, like, we that can switch off muscle groups and all that sort of thing, just starting to get the body back to a state where it's just, we've got the feeling back, where it's not so loose and floppy. And then we'll start to just gradually do things little by little. Yeah. So little by little, things can change so much. And one saying that could be useful is, it's like a rose. You can't force it to bloom. And we know what will happen if you do. But with every rose beneath it, this beautiful flower, there's some thorns. And, we've got to accept them as what's part of the beautiful rose. But all the rose really needs to bloom is a little bit of water, a little bit of sunshine, and a little bit of care.
Some love, yeah.
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 So I would challenge any mum listening that might be going, oh God, that's not going to do anything. Really, I challenge you to ask yourself that. Because that's where a beautiful body starts, I believe.
Totally. It's our thoughts. I remember I used to really talk quite horrible to myself. I hate this. I don't like this part of me. And I started to, every time one of those thoughts was coming through, I would say, I love you, Gabrielle. And then the more I did that, the more I believed that. And I stopped having these thoughts. And every now and again, when I'm not such in a good place, they come back, and I'm like, no, I love you. You're beautiful. And it really does work. Like it was, it changed.
Yeah.
So, and just so simple.
Yeah. So then, if we were to make all of that stuff then practical, because that's all well and good, but it's like the story of the Shaolin monks. They spend a lot of time studying the scriptures and meditating and becoming wise and all of that sort of thing, but their bodies broke down in the process. And then the myth goes, then Bodhidharma, this monk, came down from the hill and taught them Shaolin Qigong and Shaolin martial arts. So then they could be in that state, but cultivated also in the body. So you can start to take it a step further and start to have those loving intentions and loving thoughts, and then linking them with the way you breathe, linking them with gentle movements. Awesome. And just starting to see where that goes. It might start at walking. It might even start when you're standing. Just observing your body, loving thoughts, breathing. Yeah, that's like a meditation with your body involved. And then from there, it can turn into lots of other things. But that can be a really nice way to bridge it from the concept of loving ourselves to really feeling it as a sensory experience. Is the act of love. It's easy to say I love you to someone, but for them to really feel it, that requires something deeper than the words. It requires like something to resonate out of your cells. And that to me is the way I practice and teach movement to people. If you're not doing it to love yourself, then why?
And it's like, I know, like maybe some people are like, oh, that's just too simple, but it's just making that first step and just giving it a try.
It might sound too simple, but like I think Da Vinci said, simplicity is the ultimate complexity. And I believe that people, and I don't like to say people, but it's common in the Western society to really attach to things that seem complicated. And it's in our entertainment and all of that sort of thing. We're addicted to drama, and then we bring it into our own lives. There's no place for that in exercise or in physical practice, I believe. We need to come back to the simple things. It's when we get distracted from them by the latest fad, the latest trend. I'm going to do Zumba, I'm going to do aquarobics, I'm going to do blah, 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 like all these fancy things. All they do is take us away from ourselves and neglect the very thing that it is that makes us human. And these are my opinions and experiences as well. So I would challenge that simplicity, is actually the ultimate complexity.
Mhm.
If you can truly, fully breathe, it seems so simple, but the amount of things that need to happen to allow that is there's a lot of things.
It's interesting watching people breathe, like, because I've been looking at your website obviously, and I watched you. You have a test on flexibility, is the squat, and
Yes.
when you were showing that, and you were like, you were breathing on your way down, I was like, that is like, I don't know, it just looked different to like a normal breathing. Like, I know when I tried the test and I kind of couldn't do it, but I wasn't actually aware of my breath until I watched you do that. And I was like, I think you took 3 really deep breaths on the way down. I was like, gosh, that's interesting. That's different. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. It was like, what, I guess that's just your practice, and that's how far you've come, really. So I guess that's part of the process, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful noticing. That is very good noticing. Yeah, what you've touched upon is really in any movement, that the breath will be the indicator of if there was a state of mastery. If the breathing can be relaxed and centered and calm and deep, then it really shows us that the movement's comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So often, and you see this, you'll probably notice it more and more, people that can move really well in certain ways, like their breathing's, it's just, you know, when people do stuff and you're like, that looks really easy, but then you go do it and it's not. So often when people do, you know, any particular flexibility test, the first thing they do is they try do it and they hold their breath.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
And that just locks the body up.
Yeah, why do we do that automatically? Like, I remember when like doing sit-ups, like, and I would hold my breath and like, no, breathe. Like, why do we hold our breaths? Like,
well, it's very simple in my observations. It's because we're focused on the external more than the internal. So you can do that same sit-up, and I don't teach sit-ups necessarily. I don't have anything against them, but if you just focus on the quality of your breathing while you're doing that, you'll probably get deeper engagement of all of the abdominal tissue. Yeah. And you might learn something about yourself in the process. So it's not the movement, it's kind of just the way we approach it internally. Rather than like if we, you know, let's say you're doing that sit-up or doing that stretch or whatever. Yeah. The intent often is to grow, to improve the way you do that skill, you know, to go a little bit deeper, to get a little bit stronger. So what you've got to think about is, or to consider, is that contraction is controlled and relaxation is controlled by gases and oxygen that flows in and out of the body. Mm-hmm. So we have all sorts of different chemical reactions that control contraction. And if we hold our breath, that builds up waste products, carbon dioxide and all that sort of stuff, which causes lactic acid to build up.
Yeah.
So then you'll get fatigued faster.
Yeah, exactly.
The exercise feels harder.
Yeah.
So this is where then we need to kind of get our striving mind out of the way a little bit, because we might have once done that, you know, maybe before childbirth or something like that, and we want to get back to that. So we push ourselves. And I had to go through that too when I was going from athlete to couldn't walk. I'm like, but I could do all that. And I want to do all that. Yeah. But I'm here. Mm-hmm. So I had to be honest with myself and just start where I'm at and build from there. So it took patience, took acceptance, it took trust. But a few years later, I've never felt better. And I've seen it happen so consistently with people that I work with as well. It's not just something that works for me. Yeah. I'm not teaching an XYZ. I'm teaching you how to be kind to yourself while you're moving your body, how to accept yourself, how to be honest with yourself, and then apply that to physical practices. wonderful things can happen.
Yeah, I love it. Like, I'm like, I need to work with you. I've looked at your website. Actually, that's a great time now to just share some of the programs on your website, because they'd be really interesting, because people can just do these online, so they don't have to see you in person. So
yeah, so a big thing for me is to make my teachings as accessible for people as I can. So I share a lot of resources freely available on my website, and also for people that would like to take a little bit deeper step, I have some online courses. At the moment, I have 2 available. One's called the Embodied Flexibility Program, and the other one is called the Tension Release Technique. Mm-hmm. And basically these are, it's a journey. You know, they go through kind of an 8 to 12 week journey where you learn little bits at a time. You learn about your body, and it just so happens that through that process, tension is released in the tension release technique. Yeah. And then it just so happens that range of motion and flexibility and strength is improved through the flexibility program. So it's what I like to do with them is just give people some things that I've seen work time and time again.
Yeah.
So then they can apply their own observations to it and bring themselves to the practice. And then that, you know, makes it accessible to more people. And because, you know, I don't work with everyone one-to-one as well. I just really work with people because it requires some commitment and dedication and it will challenge you. So that's a really good place to start. If you can do that, then what I find is then people are ready to really work with me and really take it to the next level. And that way I can be the eyes to help them see what maybe they don't.
Yeah.
And to be more supportive through that process rather than kind of getting stuck at that one place and going, oh, I just can't do it. Yeah. So, but I'm continuing to build programs and share them. There's like so much more that I teach than what I have available publicly as well. And so that's just a process. Building a course takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
And but that's what's available at the moment. And yeah.
Does it matter like which one would you do first, or is it just personal, like what's going on with you?
Yeah, what I tend to recommend is the tension release technique to start first, and then apply what you learned to the embodied flexibility practice. And now some people will go, but I just want to get flexible and strong today. And you can, but like fair enough, push into the deepest stretch that you can and just do that every day and see how much longevity it has to it.
Yeah.
So first of all, we need to get the body balanced as best as we can, or learn to be able to rebalance it. So outside of those habits of rigidity and flaccidity, then apply that to deeper positions. So the tension release technique, it can seem very simple because we focus on breathing practices, we focus on standing practices, we focus on very gentle movement practices, and also some fascial release techniques as well. And so if for anyone that doesn't know the term fascia, it's a big web that connects your whole body. It's a really big thing that works with everything. Really important that we get that nice and healthy. Yeah. So then we can apply that structure that has much more awareness and centeredness to lots of other things. And so it seems like a step backwards for some people, but actually it's sort of like one step to the side, 10 steps forward.
Yeah, we don't learn about the fascia, I don't think. Like, I don't remember it being in our textbooks at school. Very important.
We tend to just learn about contraction and relaxation of the muscles around each joint.
Yeah.
But the fascia connects all of that. So when I look at the body, I look at it so then it's a one integrated structure. Mm-hmm. It's not the result of strength in any individual muscle group. It's the ability to coordinate them and use them together. Like a symphony, you know, if you have the drummer beating too loud, it's going to upset the whole balance of the orchestra.
I've got this amazing picture in my head now, just this web, like I've got this image of this body in front of me and just this web, and like if anything's kind of maybe a bit tight there, then it's going to affect that. Oh wow, I've got this great image.
Yeah,
Really
yeah, that's what it's like. And the other part of that is then we need to get the conductor trained. So then it can, you can direct the orchestra to make beautiful music.
Oh gosh, that's really, really fascinating. I've just got this amazing image, and I can just see, like, if I've got a tension here, that's actually pulling stuff all the way down here and up my, yeah, wow. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where these simple practices, when you stand, even for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
you start to notice those things, and it might be just like a bit of habitual doing this throughout the day, and then all of a sudden you catch it quicker.
Yeah.
And then it gets less and less and less. So that practice supports you not being in a habitual state. Yeah. So once again, simplicity has never-ending complexities. Yeah.
And this is like a long term. This isn't like, oh, I'm going to do this 8-week course and that's it, and then go back to doing your own thing. I think actually in your course you would learn that, and you would know, okay, this is a lifetime. This is something for doing every day, and
yes,
integrating into my life.
Yeah, and yeah, the purpose of going through that journey is to have a focused period, and then at the end you've experienced, and you can start to then discern the bits that you apply for your specific life. And I have some students who, like, that's what they do. They love doing every part of the practice. But other people, maybe they've got other things that they love doing as well. They intersperse the things that they find really helpful. But it's a learning process where you just, like a meal, just one mouthful at a time. Just chew it and digest it. Once you've digested, you then apply and integrate into your life to kind of do the things that you love doing. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds great. Thank you so much. I hope that the mums will get so much out of this, and they can get to your website, themovementmonk.xyz. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Yes.
Very cool.
Yes.
And find out even more about what you do. And when with your one-on-ones, is that just in person, or can that be done online? Because I know some of these people are going to be overseas.
Yes. Yeah. Well, probably about 80% of my students I've never met in person.
Okay, great. That's really
so,
great.
Yeah, I disprove my own belief that it could be done, but it's actually more effective over Skype and or Zoom as I ever realized, because once you start to learn it with yourself and me supporting you through the process, then it's a gift that stays within you. Whereas what I noticed is when, just my presence can be relaxing, I've heard, for people. And then I'm standing by someone, they're like, oh, I'm so relaxed. And I go away and they're like, how do I get that state of relaxation? So I help to then create that whilst not being in the room. So I thought it was a limitation, but it's actually a real strength of teaching online. And I do my best to keep it nice and personal, like this. And so I do teach some people where I live on the Gold Coast in person, and but most of the people I work with are in Europe, in the US, in kind of Eastern Bloc areas, Slovenia and that sort of thing, and all around. And we do it by this medium. Yeah.
That's perfect. And would you do, like, because my husband's interested as well, would it be a separate session, or could we do something together? Like,
yeah, I've got some things. I work with a couple of companies where I'm there and I can facilitate a group practice each week for them. That's something that I've customized for the companies, and I've worked with lots of couples as well. It's really important that the intent is nice and clear and unified, and that it doesn't kind of battle. So I tend to look at those situations on a case-by-case basis. Okay, cool. But it can be done if everything's in alignment. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm just really grateful for the practice that you've done, what you've done to get to where you are, and that you're helping so many people now, find peace and happiness in their lives. It's awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for seeing me, Gabrielle. And thanks for, taking the time to ask me some really thought-provoking questions. And I hope that, they at least help someone take that next step.
Yeah,
They
totally.
don't have to do everything that I have said. But there might be that one little thing or a couple little things that you go, you know what, the time is now that I start to just take responsibility and give myself a bit of love and know that I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Awesome. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Take care.
Goes both ways.
Bye.